Alright, so here's a quick video of my setup. I've got the new honeycomb yoke, which is really nice. It's I'll show you, I'll zoom into that in a moment. Throttle quadrant, pedals, the PC's over here, and got the VR goggles here. And these are the controllers which you need to use when you're in the VR for certain things, but most of the tasks for flying the airplane will be on these controls here, and I'll maintain my hands on these at all times. More about that in a minute. And just the standard monitor doesn't need to be very much because you're going to be looking through here. This is just mainly for getting it set up. Now, of course, you can fly X-plane with just this screen, but the system is built for the VR. This is the PC box, and I actually ordered this through Glime, and there's this company, it says X-Force on the front, and I think that they custom build these PCs just for running X-plane. And if you bought a flight simulator, the hardware from Glime, then this is the PC that they would include in it. They tell me that they don't make any markup off of it. They're just trying to sell the hardware so that they can sell the software. The specs on this are pretty good. What I like about it is it comes without anything else loaded on it. No bloatware. It's a clean install. So here's the box that the yoke came in. This is from Honeycomb Aeronautical, the Alpha Flight Controls yoke and switch panel. Okay, and here it is installed. It's got those crazy background red LEDs. I think you can change the color of those, but it's got all kinds of controls on the yoke knobs. And if you look closely at the switch panel, then you see that these are actual switches like you would find in a GA aircraft. The master, avionics, and all your lighting controls here. Then what I like about it is you've got an actual ignition switch over here. That's pretty cool, right? Okay, so let's go through the startup procedure without the VR. So I'm sitting here on the ramp, and first thing to do is what I want to do is turn on the master switches. And if we could see on the simulator, you could actually see that, and I get some indication that we're running off the battery and not the altimeter now. And then normally I would, before I start up the aircraft, I'd turn the beacon on. So let's see what that looks like outside the aircraft. I've programmed on the thumb switch right here my view control. So if I flip it to the outside, oh, and look, there's the service truck coming up to give me some fuel. And I see that I've got my flaps down. So I've programmed my flaps on the, let me tilt you down so you can see that. I programmed my flaps on this button right over here. Normally in the Cessna 172s that I fly, you have to reach over here and grab your flaps. This is the closest switch that I have to do this in the simulator. So let's go ahead and retract those flaps, and you can see that we're retracting the flaps. Get them all the way up. Okay, and then I'm going to turn on the beacon, and you can see that the beacon light is flashing. Let me get that turned back up for you. You can see the beacon light is flashing there. Okay, so then return to cockpit. Again, I've got the views programmed on the thumb switch here. And so my flaps are up, my beacon is on, and here I want you to see let me see if I can zoom in for you. I want you to see that switch panel right here for the ignition switch right here. So it's off, and I've got right magneto, left magneto, then both magneto position, and then one more turn to start. Zoom back out. In order to start the aircraft, I've got the mixture on this knob over here, so I need to be rich, and then I need to have some throttle in, and then this blue knob, which is usually the prop control for a multi-engine, I've got carb heat on this one, but for some reason this simulator 172, there's no knob for it in the simulation for carb heat. That's something I need to read a little bit more about. But in any case, I've got the throttle and mixture in position for the start. So let's see if she cranks up. So I'm going to back out here. All right, and if we turn the key, and in fact we're going. All right, good. So throttle back to about 1,000 RPM right there. So there's the startup procedure. And now let's take a look at what it looks like in VR. So to get in VR mode, you actually have to take your mouse, put it up here in this position right over here, click on the settings, and there's a tab for VR hardware right here, and then we're going to enable the VR hardware. So here we are on the tower ramp with the view from outside the aircraft, and I'm looking around as if I'm standing on the ramp, and then you can see I'm moving some of the control surfaces on the airplane. Inside the cockpit, this is the view that we see, and I'm going through the start sequence, turning on the master and adjusting the throttle and the mixture, and I'm going to turn the key here, crank it up. And it starts up. So we're going to taxi here off of the tower ramp. I've got to watch for the surrounding aircraft. Oh, you just saw that I turned the avionics on there after starting up the engine. There's a jet parked in front of Greenville Jet Center on my left side, and there's another one on my right, and I'm going to try to squeeze through the lamppost here and that yellow jet. We're going to be crossing runway 1028 to pick up the Delta taxiway. So this view is the recording of what's going on my computer, and let's see, whoa, I kind of overshot that runway hold marker there, didn't I? And I looked left and right and nothing's coming, so I'm going to go ahead and cross over here to Delta. It looks like there's a lot of head movement, and there is. I'm looking around, but the view that when you have the goggles on, it's much wider than this looks like cell phone video here. Okay, we're coming up to the taxiway intersection. I want to look into the left, and I want to turn right onto Delta and take this. Oh, this is Alpha, so this is turned on to Alpha, and I'm going to take this long Alpha taxiway down to runway 1. Okay, so while I'm cruising on the taxiway here, that's a pretty good clip there. I probably would get some complaints from the flight instructor that I'm going a little bit fast than I should be. In any rate, this is sort of a myopic or tunnel vision view that you're seeing on the recording. When you're immersed with the goggles on, it doesn't feel like this at all. In fact, when you have the goggles on, I don't see the door at all. It's in my peripheral vision. I don't see the sun visor. I don't see the fuel selector. Mainly what I see is the instrument. When I'm looking straight forward, I see the instrument display, and then of course out the window. Okay, we've gotten clearance to take off on runway 1. I'm making sure that the trim settings and flaps are up and fuel selector is all right. I'm pushing the throttle in, trying to maintain my runway center line anyway, and getting up to speed where I can rotate about 60 knots, and lift her off the ground. So we're taking off here to the north. We'll be crossing over 385. And I'm just going to be taking a loop around the pattern. One of the things that I like about X-Plane is just the whole physics is is very similar to what you would experience in a real aircraft. The visuals, you saw the lighting, the sun beams coming through the cockpit and making the instrument panel bright. So I'm turning now to the downwind leg. Really, the beauty of the VR is that you can actually look out the side window. You can see where the airport is. You can tell when you're traveling parallel to the runway or not. So it looks like that was just the 1028 there. And we're continuing now to the south. And I'll be slowing the airplane down, getting it down to around 1500 RPM, and getting ready to make my turn to base. I remember when I was flying this pattern that I was pretty high, and so I think when I turn to final here, you'll see that, and I'm having to drop down. That doesn't look too bad. Probably a little bit more bank than I wanted to put into it, and I'm not quite lined up on the runway center line, but we'll bring her in. I've got full flaps. Keep the pitch down to maintain airspeed around 70, and we'll get into ground effect, pull it up. Nice little touchdown right there. Okay, we're not going to go back to the tower ramp. We're going to go over to what's used to be known as the university ramp. It's the southeast ramp, I think. And I had too much speed to take the first taxiway. So here's the second one. This might be Delta again. And now I'm going to turn on, maybe this is Bravo, I'm not sure. But there's just a little taxiway that takes us over to US Aeroflight hangars. In fact, I noticed on this signage coming up here on the right, it's clear as day. That says the Uni ramp. It was clear as day to me. It's not too clear when you're looking at this recording, but we'll just bring it around here in the back into the tie down spots and whip it around in position. And not too bad. Okay. And cut the engines, turn off the mags, power down. Nice flight.